following podcast contains mature language and discussions that are not suitable for younger audiences. The stories in this podcast are not our own, but we are allowed to narrate them. Listener discretion is advised. This is the Strange and Undecided podcast. Welcome back to the Strange and Undecided podcast. I'm your host, Jarret, joined by my co-host.
I'm your co-host, Patrick.
This week, we're going to read you some scary stories again.
These are the Reddit threads that we have found of people's true stories posted to the internet. So you can decide how scary they are. Take it away.
Home invaders taken by surprise. This story happened when I was 12 years old. I'm a female and 25. The story I'm about to tell you might not be scary to most, but for me and my parents, it was. I remember it was a Saturday night, around 9 or 10 p.m. during summertime. I owned one dog at the time. His name is Benny. My parents decided that night that they feel like going for a walk around the block, walking Benny, and asked me whether I want to join them. I said no because I wanted to play PWI on my PC, that's Perfect World International. My parents were okay with leaving me alone since that walk wouldn't take longer than 30 minutes tops. As my parents got dressed to leave the house, I logged in PWI and looked around in my guild and global chat to see if anybody was on. For some reason, no one was, so I decided to join my parents instead. I got dressed, I put Benny on his leash, and we all left. I'd like to mention that I lived in an apartment building that had 10 floors, and we lived on the very first floor. Not sure how to explain, but you have the basement of the building and then the first row of apartments. I lived in the very first one. I remember always hating that because whoever would pass by our door, we would hear them at any time of day or night. Anyway, we leave the house. My dad closes the door. We had 3 keyholes and a steel bar that would block the door from the inside. The bar covered half of the door. Precautions were my father's obsession. We exited the building to enjoy our walk. After 15 minutes, we realized the wind had changed from warm summer winds to an incoming storm. My mom makes the call to go back home as Benny already did all of his duties, so we all return. We open the building door, climb the 5 stairs to our door, and attempt to open it. And my father does the following: unlocks the first 3 locks, and then attempts to unlock the metal bar that holds the door locked. At that moment, my father pauses, turns around at us with the most serious face I've ever seen on him, and whispers to us to call the police and ring the neighbor's door. My mom goes to the second apartment, and the neighbor, who I will call Ted, comes out asking my father what happened. My dad whispered to him, covering the see-through hole of the door, "Someone is in our house. He or they are holding the door. Please stay here with my family and attempt to open it. I will be back." After saying that, I see my father rush all by himself around the building in the dark. I say dark because we didn't have a street light on the side of our apartment facing the block garden. My dad disappears into the darkness. I go outside too, not following him too much, but only to hear if he's in trouble. He's my dad, don't judge me. As soon as I get out, I hear him shout, "Hey, you, come back! Who the hell do you think you are? I call the police!" At the same time I hear him shout, I look at Ted, who manages to open the door and enter the house. It no longer felt like my house. In just 15 minutes, while we were walking, the home invaders made a complete mess of our house. All of our shelves and wardrobes were pulled out, our clothes scattered all over the house. Benny's dry food was all over the floor, indicating they must have tripped in his bowls, probably not knowing that we owned a dog. But what scared me the most was how organized they were. I say they because after seeing the disaster that was left behind, we knew it was impossible for one person to hold the door, steal, and organize what they would want to take with them. I say organized because the thieves put in our living room, all packed and ready, what they wanted, but couldn't steal. On the couch, they placed our laptops, one of our TVs, my father's collection of coins, our phones, chargers, wallets, and even my father's camera. He's a photographer, and that week he had to attend a wedding. They didn't have enough time to steal all that, so they just settled with some of my mom's jewelry and some pocket money. After seeing this, in my silly child mind, I rushed to my room to check my piggy bank. I always saved up money from whatever chores I did. It wasn't much, but it was my work and savings, and at the time, I thought they stole that too. When I enter my room, I see the metal bars covering my windows are cut open, and my window is broken. This was how they entered, through my room. My room is the only room facing the side of the building and the one most secluded from views. Needless to say, I never felt safe in my own room, in which I had lived in for the next 10 years of my life until I moved in with my fiance. The police arrived. They start throwing white dust, I have no idea what it is still, all over our house to find fingerprints. They take pictures, take our statements, analyze my room and the window. They were unable to catch the home invaders, but were able to tell us that this invasion was not the only one in our neighborhood. During that month, another 4 houses were broken into, one of them being the home of a cop, not related with the cops at our home. They told us that the invaders analyzed their victims, learned their schedule, even knew where the children's rooms were as they seemed to be entering the houses through the children's windows. All the families affected by them had children. They did not expect us to be back that soon and panicked, hence one of them was holding the door with his body so that the others could flee. The person after which my dad was shouting was probably the one holding the door and escaping last through the broken window. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't change my mind and give up on raiding for gears in PWI. I would probably have come face to face with these invaders. I am happy I didn't, and I hope to God I never ever meet them. Period.
Midnight Metro Stranger. This happened to me 2 to 3 years ago. I was around 23 at the time. I am a female and I live in Romania. One night I was coming home from class. Master's classes start after 6 p.m. and end at 10 p.m. I had to take the subway for about 12 stops. The destination I had to get off at was at the end of the line for the subway. At that time, there wouldn't be many people in the subway. I'm a pretty lonely person, and all I need is my headset and my music, and I'm good to go. Said and done, I plug in my music. I pick the furthest chair in the subway, away from the only 2 people that were taking the subway with me at that time. So far, so good. Until I see, with the corner of my eye, a silhouette approaching me and sitting right next to me. It was a man, fairly built, dark hair, wearing glasses, a black shirt with a black hoodie and a sickening smile. He doesn't engage in talking with me, but would just stare at my phone as I would browse through my music. I can hear him breathe heavily, not like painfully, but still like he was feeling something very strong. I feel uneasy, so I decide to change my seat and go even further behind, trying to avoid him without looking like a freak myself. I pick a new chair, sit down, plug my headset again, and proceed with the remaining 6 out of 12 stops on my way home. I see the silhouette growing bigger and bigger, and a breeze running on my skin as I realize the guy is again sitting right next to me, glancing in midair, dead eyes, a big smile, staring right into my phone. I panic. There are still 4 stops to go. I have nowhere to hide. I think about sitting next to the other person on the subway, thinking that strength comes in numbers. She's no longer there. I start shaking a bit, but not allowing the creeper to notice me being vulnerable. I stand up, go to the door, and just decide to stand until my stop comes. This way he won't sit next to me, right? Wrong. He comes straight at me and sits on the chair right next to the door, and because he couldn't see my phone, on which he was focused so far, from that angle, he fixates me right in my soul with his black dead eyes and says, "Hi, gorgeous. Why are you avoiding me?" I am freaking out as I look at my phone trying to call my boyfriend or message him, and he stops me by saying, "I know no one will help you. You would have sent an SOS message by now. I know you didn't. That moment, I realized I'm cornered. He has been focusing on my phone to see who I was talking to, trying to figure out if I panic, trying to see if I would ask someone for help. He cornered me bad. I had the luck to reach my stop. I drop off and run for the exit, not looking back. I get out at the surface and I don't see him anymore. At this moment, I put my phone in my purse and realize I had pepper spray with me all along. My heartbeat comes back to normal as I know at least I have something to defend myself with, but still a long way to get home, and who knows if he is alone or not. I walk rather fast for maybe 5 minutes from the metro and feel a hand grabbing my wrist hard and pulling me back. Another hand covering my mouth, disabling me from screaming my lungs out. It was him. The same black hoodie, dark hair, and dead-eyed stalker. He was furious and said, "Running from me? How dare you run away from me? You should be honored I give you attention." I'm fairly built for a woman, 80 kilograms and 1.75 meters tall, so I guess he thought men don't find me beautiful or something and should feel blessed a creep like him stalks me and tries to hurt me. Now my phone is in my bag. I can't call the police. I can't reach for the pepper spray. I panic. I can't punch him in the crotch. I can't scratch him as I don't have long nails. His hand is still on my mouth. What do I do? I did the most desperate and disgusting thing I could think of just to save my life. I played along. I used my other hand to touch the inside of his thigh and mumble, "I'm sorry," while his hand was on my mouth. He took his hand off my mouth and I repeated that I'm sorry. I didn't realize he was just flirting. He let his guard down and took his hand off my wrist. He asked me for my phone number and address to drop me off, but I refused, saying I'd rather add him on Facebook, and he agreed. I told him I'd reach for my phone, but instead picked the pepper spray and got him sprayed all over his face. Made sure I'd cover both his eyes, nose, mouth, even his ears and hands. He instantly got all red, suffocating from the pepper and swelling. I called the police, told them what happened and what I did. They asked me if he is immobilized, and I said yes, as the effect wears off in 45 minutes. The police arrived there 5 minutes later to see me shaking like a leaf and a man on the ground, swollen like a pumpkin, throwing up and swearing me between gasps of breath. He was arrested, and the police told me they had been looking for him for the past week as they discovered the body of a 24-year-old woman in his apartment. Fairly built lady, 1.7 meters tall, 75 kilograms, red hair. I have red hair too. The woman was his girlfriend, and ever since, he's never gotten back to the apartment. I do not know what he wanted to do with me. I can understand why he targeted me due to the similarities, but stranger in the subway stalking a woman at midnight trying to befriend them or even worse, murder them. I hope to God you and I never meet again.
Grandma loves me from the other side. I'm a 25-year-old female. For the purpose of anonymity, I will refer to myself as Sabrina. I am from Romania. English is not my native language, but I shall try my best to make the story easy to be understood. My stories contain what you would call angels, spirits, demons, archangels, satanic people doing forbidden sessions of voodoo, and everything else. But for this particular story, I sort of believe that this is not necessarily as bad to encounter, so I lie to myself sometimes. There are many stories that I would love to share with you. You can either decide to share them, I don't mind, but mainly, I just wish to talk with someone who has went through what I did and can understand and empathize with it based on your personal experiences. The one story that I can and will share with you for now, I need time to think if I'm ready to share the less fortunate experiences for now. Like I said before, I live in Romania. Our country has Orthodox religion, basically very similar to Christianity. We believe in God and Jesus Christ, with small certain similarities and differences. For example, I don't know if it's the same as Catholics do. We keep the deceased for a night. We call it the sleeping duty or guard night. We do not take that body out of its house he or she has lived in for their entire life in order to help the spirit find its way to heaven easier. The next 2 days, as we bury the body after 3 days, we take the body to the church where loved ones, but not relatives, to the deceased may come and pay their respects to that person. After this process concludes, we bury the body at the cemetery where the priest will chant prayers helping the spirit of the deceased understand that he or she is no longer among the living, as Romanians are very spiritual people and believe in the afterlife. Understanding this is important as the story is pretty detailed itself. I had 5 grandparents, 3 grandmothers, and 2 grandfathers. My first grandfather, we shall call him Michael, died when I was 6 years old due to a heart attack in August of 2007. He raised me, and his death marked my life ever since because I couldn't grasp the significance of death. I would frequently dream about him, his messages, his signs. I would hear him in my dreams as he would guide me to be a good person, and so on. But even then, as a child, I knew what was a dream and what was reality. His wife, whom we shall call Anna, was my adoptive grandmother, as my real, by blood, grandmother, her name was Margaret, had died when my mom was 2 years old due to an abortion. During the communist years, 1946 to 1989, Romania had a strict law regarding abortions, and women would abort the fetuses on their own, in the privacy of their homes, by themselves, as no medics would agree to help them with the procedure due to the fear of being sentenced to life in prison. She died of septicemia, and my mother grew up without a mother until the age of 6 years old. Needless to say, I never met her or knew anything about Margaret, my blood grandmother. But this story is about my grandmother, the adoptive one named Anna. She was a very spiritual, wise, kind-hearted, and intelligent woman. She never had children of her own. She adopted my mom and uncle. Their names aren't important for the story. My grandfather was a military general, and raising 2 children of 6 years and 13 years was hard. How they decided to get married? Well, it was thanks to my mother because as soon as she first saw Grandma Anna, she went straight to her, at the age of 6, raised both her arms up and asked, in a jolly child voice, "Hi, my name is Christina. Would you like to be my mommy?" My grandmother burst into tears, picked her up, and immediately created a connection with my mother, whom she raised and loved as her own. It was not the same for my uncle, as he was 13 at the time and knew his own mother, Margaret, had died, and why. He denounced her and made her life much, much harder. After raising my mom and uncle, my uncle had 2 children of his own, a boy and a girl. My mom raised the girl, and when the boy was born, she had a calcium crisis that made her faint and hit her head. She refused to raise my cousin afterwards, as she was afraid she would drop the baby. My uncle never forgave her for that and hated her even more. Because I am a replica of my mother, same eyes, same face, same body shape, they immediately took me in and raised me as my father worked in 3 different jobs, and my mom was a pediatric nurse and worked night shifts. I loved growing up with her. Like I said, she was an extremely spiritual person. She loved to meditate. She would tell me about her dreams. She taught me how to decode them and what it meant. She told me about ghost encounters she had in her life and always told me not to fear any spirit that comes close to me in my life because ghosts see us as beams of light guiding them to God when they are confused. Yes, that was my grandmother Anna for you. She did this until I was 18 years old. We were very close, and I was living 5 minutes away from her, so I would visit her daily, sometimes still sleep at her place. Her hobby was to read the future in some cards she had owned, not tarot cards, but normal cards with some inscriptions she had such as Encounter with Mysterious Man, Beware Crying Child, and Careful Dangerous Woman. On the New Year morning of 2017 at 3:15 a.m., I called my grandma Anna to wish her Happy New Year and to let her know how much I and my family loved her and appreciated her. I'd like to mention that Romanians rarely express their love by saying I love you to our mothers, fathers, or grandparents. We consider that you show your love by what you do in your life and how you respect them rather than just say it in words. But that night, for the first time in 23 years, I felt that I needed to tell her that, and I still don't know why. Her voice changed. You could hear her chuckle in a soft, happy way. She then told us she loves us all back and forever will. Nothing seemed suspicious, as I am a very sensitive and emotional woman myself, so the night went on normally. She was at a party. I was at my fiance's house. The next day, January 1st, 2017, I receive a phone call from my father who told me that Grandma Anna had died the previous night. I couldn't express in words how my heart simply left my body, as if my own existence stopped. Refusing to acknowledge that she was dead, I rushed home. The police were there. The ambulance was also there. They say she died of a heart attack due to the climate change, the same way as my grandfather Michael did 11 years before. Outside it was cold. Inside the house it was too hot, and she was rushing to change her clothes. Her heart couldn't handle the temperature change. Her body couldn't balance the heat, and she died. But what I found particularly weird, the policemen and ambulance staff analyzed her and declared her time of death was around midnight. They said there was no way I could have talked to her at 3:15 a.m., because by that time, the body would have already had rigor mortis set in. Who did I talk to? Because it was her on the phone, it was her voice, and she seemed incredibly fine to me. Call it a sick joke or just medical staff TOD error, really creepy. During her funeral, I decided to write her a goodbye letter, as I am very spiritual, and even though no one will read it, I like to consider she took the message I had for her in heaven and passed it around to my other grandparents. I wrote in that letter that I do love her a lot, that I thank her for her every sacrifice she has made for us, and I wish to tell Margaret, the real grandmother, which I had never met because she died, that I love her too. I put that letter in my grandmother's coffin, kissed her forehead, and watched her go on her last road. My mom knows about the letter. She has yet to ask me what I wrote in it. After her funeral, I get a phone call from my grandmother. Yes, my Nana Anna. At first, I thought it was my father, as he would still use her phone to let all of our relatives from other countries know that she had passed away. So normally I answer the phone and I hear something unimaginable. I hear my Nana Anna. I hear her voice clearly, with intermittence and static occurring whenever she would pause. It was a soft, fading voice, nothing scary, nothing fearful, nothing intimidating. It made me feel like she was indeed there, but I will admit the whole situation did freak me out. She said to me, "Hello, dear. I called to let you know I passed the message and I love you too." I couldn't reply as the phone call hung up right after. It left me feeling so vulnerable, as I thought maybe someone is playing a sick joke, but it couldn't be that. I saw my Nana buried myself. I saw the coffin being sealed. I saw the letter exist inside the coffin until the very last second. No one took it out to read it. She had 3 sisters, but they were all dead and none of them had her voice. No one could have repeated her voice that perfectly. But the even scarier part comes after the first phone call. After another week, my phone starts ringing again under the same number. I answer, already having forgotten about what happened, and I hear an old lady, a voice that wasn't familiar. I did not know who this lady was. It was a pretty soft but strong voice. It felt like a relatively young woman. I would say somebody around 30 to 40 years or so. I'd like to mention that at this time, I was in the same room with my father, who owned her phone still, and I received the call. Her phone is in front of me on the table, and it's not ringing. I open her phone, and as I speak on my phone, her phone had no battery, and it was dead closed, but I still got the phone call. I answer. I hear this weird lady, and she goes, "Hello, sweetheart. You don't know me, but I know you. I received your message, and I love you too." Then the phone call hangs up again. Needless to say, I started screaming and panicking so hard that my dad immediately went to the telephone service to find out who was playing pranks on us. They went through her profile, numbers dialed and received. My number was not in her agenda of calls, so we decided to disable her number. Ever since then, we did not receive any more calls, but I do go to the cemetery more often and talk to them. This year is the first year from her death, so we are sort of celebrating her memory. But for me personally, I do not celebrate her memory as I feel she is constantly physically with me. I often have dreams of her. She would often visit me at nights. I'm saying dreams because I feel like I'm going insane if I ever conclude on these situations being something other than dreams. To all the people out there who encounter ghosts or paranormal activity, I'm going to say what my grandmother Anna taught me all my life. Do not be afraid of them, as they are just confused, lost souls who see you as beams of light helping them to find God. The way you feel about them will determine how they will react to you.
Please lock your doors. I posted this a while ago, but it got lost. However, since it's been a year after the incident, I figured this would be a good place to share it as it's about someone I never ever want to come across again. It all started and ended the day after I took my last final at this community college. I don't know if he was a stalker or if it was a break-in gone weird. So from the beginning, I was so nervous that I was going to fail this one class and was not going to be able to receive my AA degree. Later in the day, I was out at the pool at my apartment complex with some friends and my roommates when I checked my phone and saw I passed my class. I got so excited I told everyone we were celebrating because I was the last one to have a final. It was 3 days before I got to walk and graduate with this degree. I decided we should have some fun before we all went our separate ways. As it got later into the night, we decided not to go out and to stay in. We invited a couple more people over and went on with the night. Around 2 a.m, people started to leave and head to bed. The only people left were my 2 roommates, both of the people they were dating, and one other friend. We were still messing around, and because our apartment was on the first floor and next to the pool, we went to go night swimming. As soon as we were done with that, I was ready to just hang out and be in for good for the night. My roommates and the other friend all left to go somewhere else for a little while, which was fine, nothing out of the ordinary. I got some food and went to my room to hang out until they got back. The way my room is set up in our apartment is that you have to walk through the whole apartment to get there. Because our apartment was in the front of the complex and near the pool, it was near the front gate at the time. The gate was left open because it was broken. I've never had an issue with living this close up front until this night. My room has one big window and you can easily see in my room when I don't have the blinds or curtains shut. I had a closet with mirror doors, which if you look in through the window, you can see every part of my room in it. So while I was waiting for my friends to get back, I fell asleep. The last time I looked at a clock, it was 3:30 in the morning. Also, key part in this, my bedroom light was on when I went to sleep. The next time I woke up, it was around 5:30 a.m. There were slow flashes going off. It was like I had a strobe light going off in the corner of my room. I woke up really confused and thought it was my friends coming back to mess with me. Once my eyes got more adjusted, because the room was now dark, I realized that it in fact was not my friends messing with me, but a single man who is at least 6'1", wearing a green Nike hoodie with the hood on in the corner of my room by my closet, holding a phone up taking pictures of me. Mind you, I had tiny Sophie shorts on with one of my legs hanging out of the covers. I don't think he realized I'd woken up, and when reality sunk in, I said, "What the fuck?" And instead of coming at me or running out of my room, the man put the phone down and walked out of my room, not saying anything, not in a panic, just walked out. Me being the dumbass I am, I ran after him saying, "Hey." I tried to follow him out, but once I got to the front door, I didn't see him anywhere. I ran back inside, woke up all my roommates asking if they were messing with me. When they said no, I called the police. I looked around my room and saw the only thing missing was my laptop that was on my desk in the far corner of the room. The weirdest part about that was the fact that my laptop was in the farthest part of the room with my door closed, and outside in the kitchen on the counter was 3 other MacBook laptops, 2 wallets, and at least a $300 speaker. But the only thing missing from the whole apartment was my laptop. Later on, I found out that the front door and the patio door were never locked when everyone got back and that the police couldn't find the guy or my computer. What made things worse was that the SIM disk from my camera was in the computer, so all my personal photos from that camera were now accessible to this guy. Some things I saw a couple days later while I was getting ready to move out freaked me out even more. Like I said earlier, if you looked in my window, you could see my closet mirrors and see just about my whole room. One thing that was super noticeable was my tapestry. It was a very distinct and different kind of tapestry. It has two wolves howling up to a moon and is all black and white. One day when I was packing my car, I happened to look up. It was starting to get dark, and as I looked up, I noticed in the apartment above mine, through the blinds on the wall, was the exact same tapestry as the one that was in my room. What creeped me out even more was the fact that it had the little purple lights I put on it from my mom because she knows my favorite color is purple. In that room above, the lights in the fan were switched out for purple ones. As if I wasn't creeped out enough, an all-black cat came up to the window and my stomach started to feel weird because the year before I was still living in my room, I got a baby kitten that was all black. In the end, the guy was never found and I never saw his face, which freaks me out to this day, and I hope I never come across him again. I never got my laptop back and I never found the SIM disk to my camera. Best advice to anyone in a college town is no matter what, always lock the doors, because you never know what you could wake up to.
Paranormal experience. I'm a 16-year-old male, and I used to be a bit of a skeptic to all things paranormal until one weekend at an abandoned house. To give some backstory, I was with my two best friends at the time, Delaney and Julia. We were home alone and bored at Delaney's house with nothing to do. I can't remember who thought of it, but one of us had the idea to drive around some of the old dirt roads and check out abandoned buildings. There are a lot of abandoned places around where we live. It's pretty far out in the country and it's surrounded by either farms or woods. So we went to the first two old tobacco houses, took a few pictures, and just sort of goofed off. We got back on the road and saw an old, unkept driveway. Keep in mind, hardly anyone lives on this road. So we decided to go down the driveway despite Julia saying we shouldn't because it didn't feel right to her. Not the fact that I'd be trespassing, just that she had extremely bad vibes about the place. However, Delaney and I insisted. We drove down and it went pretty far back into the woods. This is where weird things started to happen. We parked the truck in the little clearing and noticed an abandoned house in the distance. However, before we got out of the truck, the front sensor went off beeping like crazy, and so did the back one. It was as if somebody had walked around the truck. The weird thing about this is that we were parked in a clearing, so there was nothing to make the sensors go off. Even if there was something around us, it would have gone off before we even parked the truck and wouldn't have just randomly gone off in that order. Delaney and Julia were kind of freaked out, but I just ignored it. It wasn't until later that this would freak me out too. We all got out of the truck and started walking towards the house. I was in the front with my friends walking a decent distance behind me. If I'm honest, I was just showing off and acting fearless. I wasn't that scared until I saw her. A woman with dingy, unkempt-looking hair and a colonial-style dress looking around the corner of the house. She looked at me and just put her finger up to her lips and shushed me very loudly. The feeling I had is almost indescribable. Imagine feeling as if all sense of safety and protection is gone and you don't feel at all happy. My heart felt like it stopped. I started crying, I was so scared. I knew she wasn't human. I don't know how, but I just knew. I turned around to my friends and screamed, "Run!" and started sprinting back to the truck. My phone flew out of my pocket about halfway back to the truck. My friend Julia told me this had happened and I told her to just leave it. Now, if you know me, you'd know if I was ditching my phone, it'd be really serious. Julia and Delaney got back to the truck. We tried to open it, but it was locked. Delaney reached for her keys, but they were gone, and so was Julia's phone. It's as if whatever this thing was, It was trying to keep us there. Delaney ran back and picked up both Julia's and my phone, and also she found her keys. We got in the truck and floored it out of there back to Delaney's house. You might think it's just coincidental we dropped all of our things, but the thing is, our phones and Delaney's keys were all deep in our pockets, and it didn't make sense for them just to fall out on their own like that. Later at the house, we were all talking about the entire situation, and I was explaining what I had seen. My friends didn't even hear the shush, nor did they see the woman. I was afraid they didn't believe me, but Julia reassured me the look on my face and tears were proof enough for her to run as well. Later, we found out that there had been a few sightings of ghosts on the road by workers at Fort Pickett, a military facility nearby. Had we seen a ghost? I'll let you decide. All right, that's going to end our show for the night. The podcast will be going on a small hiatus and will be returning June 17th. So mark your calendars because a new episode will be dropping on that date. If you have any ideas for the show or want your story featured, please email us at strangeandundecided@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.
And good night.